The crayon drawing was smeared with red, the stick figure girl lying under a bridge, limbs twisted, eyes blacked out, and a shadowed man beside her holding what looked unmistakably like a rope. When detectives realized the child had drawn the exact position of the body, panic rippled across town immediately. If you like stories like this, make sure to subscribe and like the channel. In Orlando, during the humid spring nights of 2002, the case of 22-year-old University of Central Florida art student Megan Holloway began like so many others. A missing person flyer taped to supermarket windows and bus stops, her smiling photo framed by neon lettering begging for information. She vanished after a Thursday night class, the walk from campus to the small off-site parking lot only 5 minutes long, illuminated by half-functioning street lamps and the persistent buzz of Florida insects. Her car was found locked, purse still inside, keys on the seat. There were no signs of a struggle on the asphalt, no witnesses, no screams reported. Detectives initially believed she had willingly left with someone she knew. Megan was quiet, talented, and intensely dedicated to illustration. Her professors described her as sensitive, her art portfolio filled with watercolors of bridges, canals, and the hidden, industrial segments of Orlando tourist crowds never saw. She rented a studio loft near Lake Underhill, preferring solitude and night work. When she disappeared, her final project sketches sat untouched on her drafting table, brushes still damp. The investigation gained traction only when a jogger reported a foul odor beneath the old Colonial Drive bridge just 8 days later. It was a rain-swollen Sunday, the river moving too fast for early recovery attempts. Search crews arrived with cadaver dogs, and the body was found lodged against a concrete support beam, half submerged by tannin-brown water. It was Megan. Her wrists showed ligature bruising, her lungs held silt, and the ME concluded she had been strangled before entering the water. Her autopsy report made headlines across Central Florida. The case seized public attention because Megan represented an archetype that terrified parents, a hardworking college student walking a familiar route, surrounded by campus security posters and emergency call boxes that changed nothing. Detectives cataloged fibers, mud, and the degraded state of her clothing. Nothing pointed to a particular suspect. Weeks passed. Orlando's media cycle churned. Students marched with candles along University Boulevard. The Holloway family, originally from Tallahassee, stood trembling under camera lights, begging for leads. A tip hotline received dozens of calls, mostly speculative, none actionable. Then came the drawing. It arrived without fanfare when a kindergarten teacher in Winter Park contacted police. One of her 5-year-old students had produced a strange, frightening image during free drawing time. She explained that the figure under the bridge looked eerily similar to what she'd seen on the local news broadcasts of Megan's recovery site. The stick figure man, black crayon dragged across his face to obscure identity, hovered near the girl, rope in hand. The teacher might have dismissed it as childish imitation if not for the bridge details. The precise number of support beams, a crooked metal sign on the west side, and the broken surface of the guardrail, elements never released to the public. Detectives visited the school the same afternoon. The child, a small boy with freckles and a Buzz Lightyear backpack, sat silently while investigators spoke with his mother. According to her, he had never been to Colonial Drive, nor had she. The only bridges he knew were those on playground sets and cartoon landscapes. When officers asked how he knew what to draw, the boy simply said he dreamed it. The comment unsettled them, not for its mystery but because he described small features consistent with the crime scene. The water's brown swirl, the concrete graffiti, the red smear across Megan's shirt. Critics accused the department of sensationalism when news of the drawing leaked. The Orlando Sentinel ran front-page coverage. Citizens demanded insight, and the police chief ordered silence while forensics combed the region for any trace of the man in the crude sketch. Though the child was never viewed as a suspect, nor could he be, the drawing changed everything. It implied observational knowledge, and if the boy had seen something, someone had been close enough to expose him to the body or perpetrator. Neighborhood canvassing intensified around Lake Barton and Colonial Drive. A maintenance worker recalled seeing a black pickup truck parked illegally near the bridge between midnight and 2 a.m. the night Megan vanished. A fisherman mentioned hearing what he thought was a thud over the railing but assumed it was trash dumping, a common violation along the riverbank. Still, the descriptions lacked specificity. The black pickup, undistinguished, remained a ghost. As detectives pressed deeper, they found Megan's sketchbook contained repeated illustrations of that same bridge. Some were dated nearly a year before her death. She seemed drawn to its decay: collapsed fencing, rebar jutting from cracked pavement, algae staining concrete pillars. For investigators, the fixation suggested familiarity. She may have walked there often, perhaps drawn by the late-night quiet to sketch undisturbed. In July 2002, a potential break arrived when trace soil samples recovered from her shoes showed unique paint flecks, likely from industrial marine coating used on municipal structures. Analysts matched the composition to maintenance work completed under the bridge 2 months prior. Detectives theorized she encountered her killer during one of her nocturnal art excursions, not on campus. A profile emerged: a local laborer, central to bridge restoration, familiar with the remote underside chambers where mechanics stored equipment. Investigators obtained lists of seasonal contractors, narrowing down names of those who worked night shifts. Interviews began, slow and methodical. Some men had already left the state for hurricane reconstruction jobs. Others seemed bewildered by suspicion. Then another connection: the kindergarten boy's father, a subcontractor for the same bridge project. Detectives reviewed his time logs, mostly day labor, and his personnel record, clean of criminal charges but containing minor complaints about temper. When questioned, he admitted taking his son to the bridge once to show him where Daddy worked, though he swore it was months before the murder. The detail had never been told to the mother. More troubling, he confirmed owning a black pickup. He attributed the late-night presence to equipment checks, though no supervisor had recorded overnight visits. In October, the investigation stalled again for months. Forensics lacked DNA, fingerprints, or conclusive fiber matches. The rope fibers around Megan's wrists degraded in river water. Composition tests proved generic. Without direct evidence, prosecutors refused indictment. Orlando moved on in small, guilty increments. The Holloways returned to Tallahassee for Christmas, leaving a wreath at the bridge base. Students drifted to new semesters. Construction crews finished repairs and repainting. The river kept moving, silent and indifferent. But the drawing remained pinned to the evidence wall in the homicide unit, a child's quiet testimony no one could decode. Investigators studied it in sleepless cycles: the rope, the bridge shadows, the posture of the stick-figure girl. By spring 2003, internal review teams re-examined the case. They re-interviewed the boy, careful not to lead him. This time he mentioned a sound, splashing, followed by coughing that didn't sound like someone waking up. Detectives realized he might have heard, not seen, the event. If his father had indeed brought him to the site on a late night, the boy could have been half asleep in the truck, absorbing sounds and faint slivers of visual detail, later translated by crayon. A search warrant for the subcontractor's vehicle uncovered faint, aged traces of algae and silt in the truck bed. Prosecution argued environmental contamination. The defense claimed river work exposure. The case hinged on circumstantial scaffolding. Megan's studio was cleared out by her parents. Among her final pieces, investigators discovered a canvas of the bridge, unfinished. The water bled below the structure, and in the corner she painted a figure, small and shadowed, possibly a self-portrait studying the darkness. With each passing month, Orlando's memory dulled, except for a select few who continued to parse fragments. The ME who recalled the precise bruising, the teacher who couldn't forget the red crayon smear, and the detective who could still smell the river during recovery. Everyone hoped the drawing might still give up its answer. They just didn't know yet how painfully accurate it would become. The drawing was sealed in a climate-controlled archive room by summer 2003, not because it was irrelevant, but because detectives feared contamination of what might eventually become psychological evidence in court. Its lines remained crude yet disturbingly aligned with the ME's diagrams, the tension of the ligature, the precise hip angle of Megan's body, and the position relative to the western pylon. The rope in the child's sketch was thick, frayed at one end. Investigators had not released any detail about rope condition to the public, yet the boy's representation, even through waxy crayon, seemed exact. Detective Marlowe, who took lead after Captain Rivera's retirement, conducted a quiet re-review of everything: case files, satellite images, reconstructed timetables from traffic cameras along University and Colonial. Megan's final confirmed sighting occurred at 9:46 p.m., when a security camera caught her leaving the North Studio exit, backpack slung, posture calm. The footage showed her stopping near the parking lot edge, as if startled by voice or motion beyond frame. She moved toward the sound, not away. The timestamp captured only 2.3 additional seconds before she vanished out of view into the night's humidity. Vehicle lights passed in the distance, none stopping. The bridge records placed the subcontractor and a limited crew on evening shifts for only 2 weeks, ending 3 days before Megan disappeared. His badge logs confirmed swipe-ins at 5:12 p.m. daily, but no logs for late entries. When confronted again with badge inconsistencies, he claimed supervisors allowed occasional off-record access. No one corroborated this. His alibi for the night in question was thin, home alone while his son slept. His wife, estranged but not yet divorced in 2002, lived in Apopka at the time and offered no exoneration. By late 2003, the case began drawing national analysts. America's cold case boom was building, talk shows featuring criminal profilers, and Orlando's media revived the tragedy with urgency. They replayed images of the riverbank, the bridge's angles, the face of the child whose art now bore investigative weight. That winter, an anonymous envelope arrived at the homicide unit. Inside, a photo of the bridge shot at night, time-stamped within an hour of Megan's last appearance. The image, slightly blurred, caught the curve of a black pickup hugging the guardrail. More striking was the faint silhouette of a child's booster seat visible behind the driver. It was never confirmed whether the photo had been taken by a bystander or staged. Media pressure intensified. Reporters demanded updates. The department, cautious due to lack of direct physical evidence, maintained procedural silence. Forensic analysts turned toward environmental science, analyzing pollen traces from Megan's clothing. A rare spore variety from a riverside vine grew only beneath the shaded portion of the bridge, confirming with precision that Megan had been beneath the structure before entering the water. The ligature marks suggested controlled force, symmetrical bruising, compression patterns not consistent with panic but with practiced strength. Detective Marlowe requested visitor logs from the child's school, cross-referencing any individuals tied to construction work, water maintenance, or transient subcontracting. A custodian, recently relocated from Louisiana, had also worked short-term at the bridge project. His whereabouts during Megan's final week were inconsistent, yet his record lacked violent history, and he possessed neither a truck nor familial ties to the child. Still, his inclusion widened the suspect's circle, but diluted the core theory. Meanwhile, Megan's art resurfaced in unexpected places. A gallery show in downtown Orlando displayed her final semester pieces, curated by peers in tribute. One painting, until then unnoticed, depicted a truck's headlights cast across river water, fragmented into argent and rust tones. Investigators wondered if it was memory rather than imagination, an encounter weeks before her death, perhaps someone watching her sketch, engine idling. In April 2004, the kindergarten boy spoke again, now older by a year, language sharper. When approached gently about the night at the bridge, he mentioned something new, a glove on the man's hand, black and sticky. The detectives recognized the description. Industrial neoprene gloves used in bridge repainting were exactly that, thick, tar-coated from anti-corrosion sealant. The detail had never entered public discourse. It shifted the scale around the subcontractor once more. A warrant for the man's storage unit uncovered rope lengths consistent with marine rigging techniques. The fibers, though degraded, bore similar twist patterns to the ligature remnants found on Megan's wrists. Defense attorneys later argued rope similarities in Florida were commonplace among fishermen, dock builders, and hobby boaters. Prosecution specialists pointed instead to the knot type, a half-hitch double securement used routinely in structural suspension work, identical to training logs from the subcontractor's crew manual. Yet the case still lacked singular, non-circumstantial resolution. Every thread remained plausible but contestable. The state attorney's office hesitated to file charges. Detectives felt a quiet dread that the drawing, the accidental psychic footprint of a sleeping child's exposure to violence, might be the only record of truth the case would ever hold. By 2005, Orlando expanded, skyscrapers creeping, older neighborhoods resurfacing with renovation money. Colonial Drive's bridge underwent another construction phase, new signage erasing memory of rusted edges Megan once painted. Her parents, still in Tallahassee, received yearly case updates, none hopeful, all composed. The river moved unconcerned. But memory clings differently to those who investigate. Marlowe revisited the drawing countless times, seeing not childish exaggeration but spatial memory. Distance between beams, the precise rise of guardrail shadow, the slanted perspective of someone viewing from inside a truck cab, half-lidded with sleep. The boy couldn't have drawn the underside bolts without having seen them. The art was accidental testimony, the earliest kind, not coerced, not suggested. The subcontractor drifted from job to job, never charged, leaving behind rumors. The boy grew, entering middle school, then high school, carrying no conscious recollection of the sketch that once froze a city. Only the teacher, retired and living in Ocala, held on to the day she saw the red crayon dragged so forcefully the paper tore. By the 10-year mark, Cold Case Division digitized everything. Megan's case joined databases with algorithmic cross-reference. A latent print search found a partial match on a maintenance ladder beneath the bridge, incomplete, water-corroded but indicative of presence. It did not match the subcontractor but another crew member, one long since relocated to coastal repairs in North Carolina. He died in 2009 from unrelated causes, and thus, that thread dissolved. Still, the drawing remained the axis. Analysts revisited child psychology, memory encoding at 5 years old, sensory retention, dream transcription of real events. The child may have witnessed light, shape, color from a truck window, later translated with terrible exactness. By 2019, DNA advancements allowed re-extraction testing on Megan's clothing. Minute traces of sealant resin were identified, composition matching only 3 municipal projects conducted in 2002. The Colonial Drive bridge was one. 2 others were miles away, unrelated to any known timeline of Megan's movements. The subcontractor resurfaced in Florida property records in 2020, living near Cocoa Beach. Investigators reopened contact, not as accusation but to fill old gaps. He denied harm, yet admitted the marriage dissolution that year had been volatile. Restraining orders filed in 2003 hinted at explosive temperament. Still, temper is not murder, and suspicion is not proof. In reconstructive modeling, forensic architects mapped Megan's last steps, her trajectory from campus toward the bridge, the probable abduction point if she'd been lured by recognition of a familiar work truck. Models showed she could have reached that exact location by 10:05. The river's current speed suggested entry shortly after. As years bled forward, Orlando changed but never fully forgot the college artist whose life narrowed to a single bridge span. The child's drawing, now stored in sealed records, captured not horror's intent but its recurrence. A silent witness whose memory told truth before language could. At the 20-year anniversary, when departments revisited unsolved female homicides statewide, Megan's file moved once again into active review. Analysts noted the single unchanged detail across decades: the rope. No one had ever fully accounted for its origin, length, cut, fiber type beyond generality. It remained the lone tool linking the victim to the industrial world beneath the bridge. And the drawing, patient in its small folder, awaited relevance. It still held what investigative procedure could not name: position, angle, presence. A man in shadow, a girl collapsed, a river indifferent. The truth had been rendered once in red and black wax. Now the case only needed the world to see what the child had already seen, without understanding: how the body lay, how the water took, and how the shadow watched. Everything pointed back to that bridge, and someone still alive carried the final unspoken piece. The final push to resolve the Holloway case arrived not through confession, witness courage, or forensic breakthrough, but through infrastructure. In 2022, Orlando approved demolition of the original Colonial Drive bridge, citing erosion and structural instability. Before contractors could dismantle beams, state law required one final environmental and archaeological sweep of the submerged support zones. Divers descended in late summer, water thick with algae, sediment, and 20 years of accumulated river debris. Beneath Pylon 3, wedged inside a rusted maintenance cavity unreachable during earlier searches, they recovered a sealed plastic toolbox. Inside, a coil of marine rigging rope, industrial gloves stiff with dried sealant, and a work ID badge faded beyond legibility except for one surviving detail: the hollow imprint of a child's cartoon sticker, Buzz Lightyear, half peeled but recognizable. Investigators did not need pristine names. They needed only proximity: which workers had children that age, who used that brand of rope, who lived near the bridge during the spring of 2002. It did not confirm a killer, but it eliminated the idea of random predation. The connection solidified: someone tied to municipal labor, someone accustomed to river access and maintenance chambers. The box elevated suspicion but did not satisfy the prosecutorial threshold. It had no fingerprints, no DNA, and the river had erased decades of trace. Yet the narrative tightened. The subcontractor, long the gravitational center of inference, reappeared in records only when child support disputes forced public financial disclosure. He resurfaced in Merritt Island recently, still quiet, still solitary, his son now an adult living separately. When detectives reapproached the young man in 2023, he did not remember the drawing itself, only the aftermath. Teachers whispering, his mother crying without explanation, and the strange absence of his father from holidays soon after. Cold case analysts asked if he recalled being taken to the bridge at night. He hesitated, then admitted a flash, his father's voice, engine hum, an odor of tar and river rot. He believed he had slept in the backseat, waking briefly to see headlights bounce across dark water. Nothing more, nothing accusatory, only sensation stamped without context. Detective Marlowe did not push. Memory at that distance becomes fragile, its edges blurred, easy to fracture. Prosecutors reviewed the rope once more. Knots were preserved enough to analyze pattern. Marine engineers confirmed near certainty that the double-lock configuration matched training manuals from the exact 2002 bridge restoration crew, not mere similarity but documented method. It narrowed suspects to 7 names still alive. 4 lived out of state, 2 deceased, leaving only one whose location aligned, whose badge activity was irregular, whose child sat in a truck that night absorbing shape and sound. Still, law required more than haunting alignment. It required one incontrovertible thread. For weeks, nothing arrived. Then a retired safety inspector from the 2002 project contacted investigators, not to confess but to correct records. He explained that late-night check-ins had, in fact, occurred off books for select personnel when corrosion tests required cooler temperatures and minimal traffic vibrations. He named 3 workers. Only one owned a black pickup and requested supplemental overnight access, the subcontractor. The inspector remembered the son once, small in pajamas, waiting in the vehicle while his father retrieved tools. It was not confession. It was not eyewitness testimony, but it aligned every disparate piece. The drawing, the rope, the gloves, the child's sensory memory, the vehicle, and Megan's documented habit of sketching beneath the bridge during quiet hours. Investigators reconstructed the likely timeline not as assumption but probability. Megan worked late, walked toward the structure she painted obsessively, encountered a familiar work truck or man from previous evenings, accepted or tolerated proximity, then vanished. At the 21-year mark, Orlando's DA convened a special review panel. Though charges remained unsustainable in absence of biological evidence or direct admission, panel consensus declared the case closed in narrative if not in law. The Holloway file would remain technically unsolved, but internally, the department acknowledged the likeliest perpetrator, sealed by ethics from naming him publicly. The river outlived everyone's certainty. The bridge came down in winter, its steel and concrete stacked in silent slabs along the shoreline. Workers paused only once when they reached the 3rd pylon. Protocols demanded no ceremony, yet even demolition crews felt the gravity of history embedded in bolts and rust. The child, now a man, visited the site privately after demolition. He stood facing the water, not remembering horror but sensing residue. He never knew that his drawing, created in innocently brutal wax strokes, had guided an entire department across 20 years. His mother, long removed from Orlando, never understood why her son became quieter in adulthood, as if memory had left an imprint deeper than awareness. Megan's parents received the final briefing in restrained language. No trial, no sentencing, but resolution by convergence of evidence and absence of contradiction. They did not seek public statements or media reopening. They held instead to the small truth that their daughter's final artwork, cleansing water painted in pigments of rust and night, had been understood not as fixation, but for warning. The drawing remains locked in a temperature-controlled archive downtown. It is rarely referenced now, cited only in training modules about non-traditional witness imprinting. How a child, half asleep in a truck cab, can register shadow, rope, sound, and bridge geometry with a precision adults often miss, then translate terror into iconography before language evolves enough to understand it. In the end, there is no tidy closure. No trial transcript, no formal conviction, no moment where justice stands unchallenged. Only a bridge that no longer exists, a river that never stopped moving, and a girl who painted decay and water until both consumed her. Orlando forgot publicly, as cities must, but individual memory persists in quieter corners. An old teacher in Ocala who still remembers the torn red crayon stroke. A retired inspector who regrets every undocumented shift. A detective who still wakes imagining the current pulling a body away from light. And a man who once drew with absolute clarity the truth adults refuse to see. The case ends not with revelation but acknowledgement. Some crimes resolve only to the degree that the living accept what evidence, memory, and river currents are willing to yield. Here, a child's drawing solved everything, and yet by law solved nothing at all.